The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Join Lowe's Moore as he reveals how you can begin to maximize that power by exploring yourself on the deepest levels and committing to making lasting and positive changes. Get ready to achieve breakthroughs that will lead to accelerated growth and transformation, because you are now tuned in to The Blueprint.
Why they actions contradict the lamb. I'm fellowshipping when I'm with the fam. That's more relations. That's forming a fun.
Good evening. This is Lowe's Moore, and welcome back to The Blueprint. Man, I'm really excited this evening to be back before you guys. I mean, I want to start out by saying first, thank you. Do appreciate all your support that you have given The Blueprint over a year. And I'm really excited to come before you every single week and put in the time and the work to bring on, guests that we think may have a very powerful impact in our lives. I mean, these interviews have been a blessing to me, and I started it during the pandemic, and to be an encouragement, to encourage people, man, to be strong during that time of crisis. And our guests have been amazing, and so I want to get started. Because something I do every week. This is my pebble. Is a little bit bigger than a pebble, but I drop each week this pebble in the pond. Even though I don't have a pond here, I drop it each week because I believe that the guests that you're going to hear, that you've been hearing, and you will hear tonight, will have such a profound impact on your life at some point. You may hear tonight and not receive anything, and somewhere down the road, a couple of weeks from now or a year from now, you might say, man, I heard somebody say something on The Blueprint, and then it just comes back to you and you get encouraged. We're here just to encourage you, just to strengthen your mindset. And as you know, as I said in the intro, it's important to be able to make positive and powerful choices. And so here I am, I'm dropping it in the pond. We're about to get started here. And let me say this: yesterday, this week coming up on the 20th of October, there will be a virtual gala for the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon. And I had the distinct pleasure on yesterday to do an interview with Jb Smoove. He's in town down out Caroline's. So I don't know if you like comedians or not, but he's at Caroline's. He's going to be there tonight and tomorrow. And we just had a great conversation about a place that we love, which is the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon. We talked about how we started at the Boys and Girls Club. Man, I don't know where I would be. He said the same thing. We both were in the projects, and if it wasn't for our parents, particularly our moms, and the Boys Club, now Boys and Girls Club, we don't know what turn our lives would have made if it wasn't for the Boys and Girls Club. And then we talked about our most powerful and impactful moment that we had at the Boys and Girls Club. And then we talked about our why. Why do we support the Boys and Girls Club? Why do we support youth agencies? And man, it was just a very powerful conversation. And so if you're not doing anything, go to the Boys and Girls Club website, find out about the gala this week. And it's virtual, so you can just tune in. Maybe you'll make a donation to the Boys and Girls Club, because these are tough times. So please consider it. And I wrote, my book is behind me, from the Boys and Girls Club to the NBA, Life on the Now Road, right? If it wasn't for the Boys and Girls Club, it wasn't for my mom, man, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I'm truly thankful to that organization for being such a powerful part of my life. And I say, see Will Rogers there. Yeah. Club member 2. Yeah. I remember back in the day, man. Yeah. Love you too, man. And so let's jump right into this. Let me get started with my book of the week. Yeah, I read this book several times over the years. And actually recommended it when I was coaching in college. I recommended this book to my team because it has so many values in it. Bill Bradley's book, um, is just a very powerful book. If you've never seen it before, he's got a number of books out, and that I was just mentioning. Uh, that I was a Knicks fan from. I'm an old school guy, so I'm a Knicks fan from the 70s because that's where it started for me. 1970 when the Knicks won the NBA championship. That's the thing that sparked me to say. I think I was in sixth grade. Sparked me to say that I wanted to play for the New York Knicks and I wanted to be in the NBA, and that's the whole thing that set that fire for me. And so Bill Bradley, Dave DeBusschere, Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, and Dick Barnett. He used to kick those feet, man. And then they had the nerve to go out and get one of the best players in the league, Earl the Pearl Monroe. And in 1972, they came back and won again. And this is one of my conversations that I had when I go to speak. And I tell the kids, teenagers, young people, I hope you see this in your lifetime. I seen this in my lifetime. I seen the New York Knicks win an NBA championship. So I hope you get to see one too. Oh boy. So get that book, Values of the Game by Bill Bradley. Right. And since we're talking about values, right, the key word or the word of the week is values. Values is just so important. If you don't have values, it's something to stand on. Man, you're going to have a problem in life, man. So find out what your true values are, right? And I can guarantee you, if you find out your core values, what your core belief system, right, it will help you become a very strong and powerful individual. And then next, one of my favorite guys over the years now is Bob Proctor. And I have the Hill Harper, Pierce Harper affirmation. I always say when you get up in the morning, you got to talk to yourself, right? You got to say encouraging things, man. You turn on the television and it's not always positive. So I make sure when I get up in the morning, I read a positive affirmation, whether I read something from the Bible or I'll pick up somebody that I'm really excited about that I think is a mentor, and I use it. And Bob Proctor is one of mine. And this week I woke up and I was saying, I'm so happy and grateful now that I am turning my goals into actions and my actions into results. Yeah, that's a good one to wake up on in the morning. But you should have something positive each and every morning you're going to say to yourself to encourage yourself to move forward. And then finally, we're going to have my music. Man, I know since I was talking about the Knicks, and I just thought it'd be appropriate to have the Jackson 5. I mean, I had them plastered all over my wall, all of my wall back in the day. And man, they had the most exciting music, and they were young people like I was. And one of my biggest moments in my life was the time that I met Michael Jackson when I signed with my agent. My agent represented Michael Jackson, the singer, as well. And I got to meet Michael Jackson at the same time. And man, that was one of the highlights of my life is to meet Michael Jackson. But I love the Jackson 5. And then the movie, my movie of the week. I don't know if you ever got a chance to see this movie. Kind of more of a documentary called Black Magic. I mentioned Earl of Pearl Monroe. He was one of the sponsors of this film. It was on ESPN. I think it was like 4 or 5 series. It was on like 3-4 nights. And it was on the history of Black college basketball. And it's just an awesome, man. It's just an awesome film or documentary, man. It's a part of history, and everyone should take a look at it. And so just want to say, join us next week. My guest next week is Derek Wittenberg from the North Carolina State championship team with Jim Valvano. He's going to be on next week. We're going to talk about, maybe they didn't think it was a miracle, but most people thought it was a miracle that they beat Houston, Keem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler back in the day. And he's doing some very powerful things down at North Carolina State and part of the Jimmy V Foundation. And he's going to be my guest next week. And then without further ado, I'm going to show you a little highlight, and then I'm going to introduce my guest, and we're going to have some fun.
Rubio thought about it. Angles for three. Angles hits. 6 3-pointer. Johnson back to Trey. Puts up a three. Back to Ingram. Steps in on three. Brandon Ingram for down. Orlando kicks it out. Kuzma for three. Chased by Bledsoe, picked up by Antetokounmpo. Johnson puts up a three. Johnny Osman had a good game. Fires for three. Johnny Osman ties it. Curry gets inside, finds Looney. Back to Curry, 3-pointer. Thompson for three. Curry. Double team. Picks it out in the corner, Draymond Green. Bang! Keep it ball. Knox for three. Bang! 2-point game. Moves off the ball. They find Gordon. Gordon puts up a three. Bang! Bang! He ties the game. He fakes. Green back out to Thompson. Puts up a three. Bang!
Good one. That was a forced offensive trip by Westbrook.
Ball back out Harden for three. Bang! Down to shoot Morris, double team, back out Smart, 3-pointer. Bang! Marcus Smart. Durant to Curry. Curry on the drive, kicks it out Thompson. Thompson corner three. Bang! Oh, they see a 2-pointer. This puts Ellingson for three. Bang! Henry Ellingson from downtown to Durant. Thompson for three. Bang! Irving switches, Butler another three. Bang! Tie
game. That's awesome. I don't know if you'll know, there only been some famous voices of our time, right? And Marv Albert, I got to go back to the old Knick days. Marv Albert, as soon as you just heard the voice, whether it was on radio, that's Marv Albert. Right. So tonight's guest is Mike Breen. And man, that voice is like amazing. And I want to just, hey, Mike, how you doing, man? Before we get rolling.
Los, thank you so much for having me on. This is a big deal to me. I'll get this out of the way first. And I was telling your wife this before we came on. You were one of my first basketball idols. I was a freshman at Salesian High School in New Rochelle when you were a senior at Mount Vernon, and you were maybe the best player I had seen in person up until that time. And my brother Joe, who was a senior at Salesian, who was a really good player, he was all county. He played in an all-star game with you at I think it was at the county center at the end of the year. And I don't know which was more important to me, that my brother was on the all-star team, whether my brother got a chance to play with the great Lowe's Moore. So this is an honor for me to be on with you, because I remember watching you play in high school. I go all the way back then. So I am so happy to be with you.
Wow. I appreciate that, man. And I think it was my youngest son, Isaiah, who played for the Roller Knicks and the wheelchair basketball team. And he went to the game. I think they played at halftime. They used to come on at halftime and play some games, run up and down the court and shoot. And they won the championship. The Roller Knicks won the national wheelchair basketball championship. And I remember him coming home and saying to me, yeah, I saw Mike Breen. I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, he asked about you. He said, "Are you Lowe's Moore's son?" I was like, I said to myself, Mike Breen knows me. I was amazed with that. I mean, he was excited. I got excited. Wow, that Mike Breen knew me. I was like,
Well,
okay.
first time we met, I was the one I was starstruck because I mean, you know how when you're a kid, you have your basketball idols, and back in those days, there wasn't a lot of college basketball on television, and the NBA was on, but it wasn't as big as it is now. So to go and see, great players, you had to go to the high school gyms back when, in the mid 70s. And I'd go to all sorts of games all the time. And of course, Mount Vernon was a powerhouse, and you were the leader of the powerhouse. So those are great years for me.
No. That was that. I mean, I was in awe, and still, I remember just a few weeks ago, was up at the golf course at Wingfoot, and I was just standing there, and just kind of waiting for some partners to come up to play, and you walked out, and and I was like, man, I know you like that. He was like, yeah. I said, yeah, Lowe's boy. You said, oh my God, these stars. I was like, wow. And then I said, man, I gotta get you my
Two struggling golfers.
Yeah, two. Well, I'm gonna speak for me. Two bad golfers. Yeah, I mean one bad golfer, yeah, I'm like, was it Bagger Vance? I lost my swing, man. I gotta find it somewhere. But yeah, and I was excited. I was excited when I seen you, and I mean, I knew who I'm familiar with your face, and I was like, man, you Mike Breen, and because the guys was looking at me a little strange there, like who's this guy? Who are you waiting for? And then the other guy, the guy there said, you know that guy? He's on television. He said that about you. I said, oh yeah, I know him.
It's a small world, Lowe's, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, this is awesome. And so I wanted to start out with a curiosity conversation, right? And this curiosity conversation is about like you, and does a journalist or an announcer have to have something special, right, other than just talking, right? Where did Bane come from?
Well, I'm a basketball fan first, and like I said, I used to go to games all the time. I would go up to the county center and watch games. I would go to Mount St. Michael in the Bronx and watch the Catholic High School League. Anytime I can go and watch a game in person, I would go. And when I became a freshman at Fordham University, I started broadcasting the games for the college radio station. But when I wasn't calling the game, I would go to every single Fordham game, even if it was on the road. We'd drive to Fairfield, we'd drive to St. Peter's, all the games, drive to Iona, go to the home games. And whenever a Fordham player would hit a big shot, as a fan sitting in the stands, that was just my response because I was cheering for my college team. So, if back in the day there were players like Tony McIntosh and Jerry Hobby, if they hit a big shot, I'd scream out bang in the stands. And I tried it, Lowe's, when I started broadcasting the games on the college radio station. But at first I didn't like the way it sounded. I think, it's kind of corny. So I shelved it for a while. And then when I started, after I graduated from college and I started doing some TV broadcasts of high school basketball, that's when I started using it again. And I liked it. And the reason I liked it is because I usually only use it for big moments. Mm-hmm. And in big moments, the crowd's going crazy, the crowd's loud. And the human voice is not meant to yell over a crowd. So what you want to do as an announcer, at least for me, is to give a really short, concise call. And bang is a one-syllable word. So a guy hits a big three or a gal hits a big three, and you scream out bang, and then you let the crowd take over, because I've always felt the crowd is an important part of a broadcast. They really enhance the announcers. They really enhance the action. So that's how it started. And again, because of how concise the call was, that's how I did it. And I got a lot of nice feedback on it. So I stuck with it, and it's served me pretty well.
That's very nice. Like my wife's father, when she would shoot free throws, he used to start yelling, "Money, money, money." That was his thing. You just knew when you get ready to shoot your free throw, it was like money, money, like that. So you had to make the free throw, when you hear somebody call out like that. My mom used to always say, when she seen me getting ready to shoot, she said, push up, like that. I was like, oh, man.
That I wasn't the first one to use it, though. There were some announcers, and I wasn't aware of this till after I started it. But I'm sure you remember the name Johnny Most. Johnny Most was the Boston Celtics radio announcer for years. And I didn't know this at the time, but later on, his son had told me after I started using Bang on TV. He said, my dad used to use Bang a lot. So in good company if I use the same word as a Johnny Most.
Oh, yeah. He was a great announcer. Yeah, just Havlicek stole the ball.
Right. That raspy voice that I wish I had. He had the perfect voice for radio play-by-play.
Wow, no. I was always wondering, what the crazy thing is that until I was thinking about doing the interview, I never knew who was saying Bang. I just knew because, it wasn't just the Knicks, because you broadcast not only the Knicks, but, like all the NBA games. And I used to hear Bang all the time, but not know who was saying Bang. You just hear that, then they highlight Bang, Bang, I was like, and then I was like doing some research, and it said, Mike Breen, Bang. So when you look on YouTube, it's all Bang. You got a million Bang highlights.
Sometimes I walk through a crowd at the Garden, especially the young kids. That's what they're screaming at me. They're not screaming out, "Hey, Mike." They're screaming out, "Hey, Mike, Bang, Bang, yell Bang." They want me to do it when I'm walking through the stand. But it's Lowe's. For me, this is my 30th year announcing NBA basketball. And sometimes it's still hard to believe. I've been so blessed in so many ways in my life. And this is one of them, because like you, I mean, the game from when I was a little kid just captured me, and I loved to play it. And I realized I wasn't good enough to play past high school, and to be able to use this profession and keep basketball in my life, make it my occupation, it's beyond my wildest dreams. So, to be able to sit courtside, especially at Madison Square Garden, and call games and be able to yell Bang I am very blessed.
Oh, yeah. Every night. I mean, I'm every night in the Garden. Oh, that's the dream job. Every night, the Knicks in the Garden. Yeah, that's a dream job. Yeah, and my wife, I gotta say this. She just put up one of those pictures, right? She was in love with Walt Frazier. She thought she was gonna marry Walt. But yet she got Lowe's.
Well, working with Clyde it's just, again, I have to pinch myself, because when I was a kid growing up in Yonkers, I was a huge Knicks fan because my dad was a Knicks fan, and I loved Clyde. So I got a poster of Clyde, and I hung it up in our house. Now, my mother, who just turned 89 and who still lives in the same house I grew up in Yonkers.
Wow.
I go back, obviously, when I see her. The poster's still up. It's a little worn, but the poster of Clyde is still up. And to go from that as a 10-year-old kid hanging up a poster to now he's been my partner for about 25 years, and to call him a friend is, again, beyond my wildest dream.
Yeah. I know, because Clyde was just awesome, and as a player. I mean, we just we don't talk enough about the history and some of the great players. Walt Frazier was a great player. I mean, everybody on the Knicks squad at that time were literally in between college and the pros. They were great players.
Oh, yeah.
They were a great team.
Who was your guy when you were playing in Mount Vernon, or even younger, who was your guy that your main guy that you loved as a kid?
Well, Walt Frazier was one of my favorite players, and I'll tell you, I do something stupid one time. Right? It's just good. It wasn't a permanent marker, but one day I had a little artist stuff going on, right? So I took one of my sweatshirts and I drew the Knicks on it, right? And I drew a number 10 on the back. I said, I'm gonna wear this, right? And so, and then I went in the mirror and I drew sideburns, right? And I literally went to school, man, with the sideburns, the marker like that on my face. And I always wanted to have sideburns. I can't grow hair on the side of my face, but only this. But yeah, I thought I was Walt Frazier back in the day. I wore number 10, right? And then I saw Earl play. We just were attracted to the guys that did something fancy, and Walt used to put it around his back, right? And then Earl used to spin, right? So those are two main pieces of my game, round the back and the spin dribble. And so I fell in love with Walt Frazier and Earl Pearl Monroe growing up. And then I gravitated towards Nate Tiny Archibald because he was left-handed. And yeah, those are my three guys, that I really enjoyed.
Well, Clyde always used to tell me that Earl may have been the toughest guard for him to cover, because he said you never knew what Earl was going to do. And the reason was because he said Earl didn't even know what he was going to do before he did it. The ultimate improviser. And that's what made him so difficult. And those two are, not only were they great players and won a championship together, but they were the epitome of sacrifice their own individual game for the sake of winning a title, especially Earl. And Clyde will be the first to tell you that. He'll say, when Earl came over, all the talk in New York was, how are they going to play with one ball? You got these two great players. And, Earl was always had the ball in his hand, played for the then called the Baltimore Bullets. And he said it was Earl who was the one that sacrificed the most between the two of them. And that was a big part of why they won.
Right. Yeah. And then, that sacrifice is similar to when you think about the team and you think about the most important thing is winning. When Kevin Durant went to the Golden State Warriors, and then immediately, guys like Steph and Clay decided that they was going to give him his space and let him do his thing. And it worked out for him. They won a few championships like that. Yeah, you have to. And I think that's one of the things I learned about. And one of the reasons I wanted to play for the Knicks, because they always seem to be selfless. Right. And that's what I really enjoyed about them, as well. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of digress for a moment. And there's three questions that, I kind of focus on before we get back to the career. And it's a question I ask all the guests, what is the importance of family, importance of education, and the importance of faith? And I heard you mention about your dad and your mom. So,
yeah, it's, that's the whole foundation of my life. And it started with my mother and father. You just mentioned the word selfless. My mother is the most on the planet. She spent her whole life and stay. She does everything for other people and for her family and for her kids. And my dad was the same way. He was a hard worker. He was a big sports fan. So he was my idol. And the thing that he taught me more than anything is he had this way of treating everybody with kindness. At the church we went to, our parish was St. Paul the Apostle in Yonkers, and he knew everybody, and gave everybody this big warm greeting, and everybody, no matter what their state of life, no matter who they were, always treated them with kindness and respect. And that was for me to grow up watching those two, my mother and father. You couldn't ask for better role models in terms of how they handle themselves day in and day out, in good times and in bad times. And so I was one of six boys, and we just the perfect family growing up. I mean, we fought with my brothers. I mean, that's part of life, part of growing up. But that was something that I just accepted as what everybody had. You had this great family, and their faith was a big part of their daily lives. And going to church and going to Catholic school, and that faith has guided me my entire life. And it's all because of what they instilled in me when I was a child. Now, like I said, my mother's still alive and 89. She's still doing really well. Dad passed about 10 years ago. But what they taught me, they're with me. They're with me every single day.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And yes, those three, I call them those three foundational pillars of life. I mean, if they're in balance, if they're in order, you're going to be good. And you said you went to Fordham, and and you graduated Fordham. Yeah, it's one of my well, that's where Denzel Washington went to Fordham.
Yep, I know. Oh, us Fordham alums, we know the big time alums like Denzel Washington and Scully. Those are two of the all-time greats.
Well, now you're in there.
No, don't put no.
Now you're one of the all-time greats.
No, I do like they still the college radio station. It's WFUV, and that's the main reason why I went to Fordham, was to work at the college radio station, and it has brought on a lot of professional broadcasters. And I'm still in contact with the station and a lot of the students that work there, and try and help them, because so many people helped me when I was there at Fordham, and to this day he's been my best friend for 40 years, Michael Kay, who's the voice of the Yankees.
Yes.
He was there when I was there, and we used to go sit in the Fordham cafeteria, and we'd talk about different things. And one of the things to talk about, what do you want to do when you get out of here? And I'm like, well, I want to be the announcer for the Knicks. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to be the announcer for the Yankees. And we'd laugh at each other like, who are these two fools thinking that they can dream about stuff like that? So we get a kick out of it now. I talked to him again this morning. We're best of friends, and it's a friendship that I cherish, because we pushed each other and supported each other, and when going in rough times, helped each other get through it. So the Fordham experience for me was phenomenal.
Yeah, but can you imagine?
Oh no! Who can I yell at? Why that picture? Oh my!
Oh man!
You didn't tell me you were going to do this to me.
Oh man! Oh man! Hey, I said when Mike sees this, oh man! I mean, yesterday we were going back. JB and I showed some pictures back and forth, some pictures when we were younger. Around the time we went to the Boys and Girls Club, and like my afro wasn't perfect. It was like somebody like did one of those little waves around the afro. Like who cut his hair? Yeah.
Some of the hairstyles we had growing up. Boy, oh boy, it's tough to look at.
Oh yeah, it was tough, man. I remember I look back and see the giant bow tie I had, and the collar of my shirt used to come all the way down almost to my waist.
How about the high heel platform shoes that we used
Oh yeah, and the leisure suit. Oh man. But what about Walt over there, man? We can't look, there's no embarrassment of anything that we wore in the past.
Well, look at the stuff that one of my favorite things, Lowe's, is when we're on the court and we're about to do our stand-up before the game, and Clyde's got one of those out there, watching the visiting team, whether it's the Celtics, the Warriors, when they're in the layup line and Clyde walks out, they can't stop staring at his suits. It's so funny. And, the thing is, if I wore that suit, I'd look like a complete fool. But he looks great in it. I mean, Clyde's 76 years old, and he still looks great in it. And, you know, the word cool is nobody uses the word cool anymore, but he's still cool. Even at his age, he has always been and will always be cool.
Yeah. He put the C in cool.
Absolutely.
and so earlier in your career, I was looking because my wife and particularly my daughter, I just remember going to, seeing her play. And one of the spots she used to play at was Marist College. And I know you did some stuff there too as well earlier in your career.
Yeah, my first job out of college was for a radio station in Poughkeepsie, and I was basically doing just news because I'd take any job, on the air that I could possibly get, because it was hard to just get a sports job back then. So I was doing news, and there wasn't a lot of sports up in Poughkeepsie at the time. The only game in town was Marist, so I would go to Marist, and I struck up a friendship with some of the people there. And the Marist athletic director was a guy by the name of Brian Colery. And when I played at Salesian, Brian was the head coach at Blessed Sacrament in New Rochelle. And that was Salesian's arch rival. And he remembered me from playing, and he wound up asking me, he says, hey, would you want to be a part of the Marist broadcasts? And of course, I jumped at the chance, and I wound up doing it for about 6 years. And I worked with a play-by-play guy named Dean Darling, who taught me so much about how to do play-by-play on television. I was actually the analyst. I wasn't even the play-by-play guy. Wow. And that was during the Rick Smits era, when they had Rick Smits, who was, obviously a pick in the draft. And it was a great time up there. It was a building that only held about 3,500. It was packed every night. So for me, not only was it fun to be in the midst of a nice college basketball atmosphere, but it was my first chance doing television. I'd only done radio up until then, and I did some television. And if you start putting up some highlights of that TV, I'm not going to talk to you again, because I was bad. It's embarrassing as you are when you first start doing some of that stuff. I had the puffy hair and the big fat knot on my tie and the clothes that didn't even fit. But it was a great entry, and I learned so much in those years at Marist and in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah. I think it's important, sometimes people see, like myself, or even now you, and they don't understand process. They just think, oh, hey, they just gave him a job with the Knicks. They don't understand that you have to work. You have to go through a process in order to get where you are. And then the other part of it is, I didn't know, for me, I always dreamt of being an NBA player, right? But I always thought about 3-4 other things that if I couldn't play, what would I do? And I tell a lot of kids today who you've seen them playing sports since they were really young, and seeing them playing the football, baseball, basketball, somewhere along the line you have to choose. And then if you really, really love sports, some of us may never get to the court, right? But that doesn't mean you can't work in sports.
Right.
Or you can't have a career in sports. So you saying earlier, realizing that maybe I wasn't going to get the scholarship or so forth and so on, but you still stayed in sports.
One of the stories when we go back to colleges and talk to some of the broadcasting students, is the story I tell them is when I get out of college and I decided I want to get into broadcasting and be a sportscaster, I told myself I was going to give myself 5 years. And if I wasn't satisfied with the progress after 5 years, then I'd try something else. I'd heard all the stories and how difficult it was to get into the broadcasting business. So I set out and I got that job in Poughkeepsie, and I was doing radio and doing some Marist. But I was making very little money, and it was hard for me to pay the rent of my apartment up there. And I have to ask my parents or my older brother, John, to help me out with the rent. And after about 2.5 years, I'd been applying for so many different jobs and sending out my tapes and resumes to radio stations and colleges. and I wasn't getting anywhere, and nothing. I wasn't even getting responses back that I wasn't hired. And I was up for the Villanova job, and I thought I was going to get it. And I was all excited. I got a letter that said, "We're sorry to inform you, but you came in second. We hired somebody else." And I was crushed, absolutely crushed. And I called my father, and I said to him, "You know what, Dad? I can't do this anymore. It's just, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not making any money. I'm living by myself in this small little tiny apartment." I said, "Why don't you send me the application for the steam fitters union?" My dad was a steam fitter. And he said to me, he goes, "How long you been up there?" I said, "About 2.5 years." He said, "Well, didn't you say you were going to give yourself 5 years? Why don't you stick it out a little longer?" And I did. And within the next 6 months, I got a job offer to work at radio in the city. And that really started a whole snowball effect of opportunities that came from me. But I was this close to saying that's it, because it was hard. It was hard to get into that business, and because I just kind of stuck with it. And you know what I always think, obviously what my dad said had a lot to do with it, Lo, but I always felt that playing sports as a kid, and then especially in high school, one of the lessons I learned, and so many lessons, as you know as well as anybody, sports teaches us, but one of those lessons, it teaches you how to deal with failure. I mean, we play sports and you fail all the time. You know, you miss a big free throw, or you miss now as at our ages, we miss an easy putt, or we strike out with the bases loaded. And so you fail, and you have to find somehow, some way, the ability to bounce back in the next at bat, or the next game, or the next hole. And I thought sports was really instrumental in that, and teaching me that, okay, it's okay to fail. You learn from it and you come back strong. And I really felt at that time of my life that sports helped me deal with, okay, I'm sending out all these tapes and resumes, I'm not getting anything. That helped me deal with, all right, you failed, but get right back up and try it again.
Yeah, I think that's an important nugget. We always talk about my grandfather used to tell me, hey, come over here, boy. I got a nugget for you. And I used to always be looking for this nugget. But then he'd give me some words of wisdom. And today we call it dropping dimes. And you just drop the dime. And one of the things my oldest son, as an actor, right? And it's always a question about love. Right. And because if you love something, then you're willing to, make those sacrifices. And I asked them in terms of acting, do you love it? Right. Because he's been in it for, about 4 years, 5 years, whatever, and he's going through the process, and he loves it. It doesn't mean it's not disappointing sometimes, going in audition after audition after audition after audition, giving your best work, right? Just not selected, so, but he's still in there. He's still in there working. So, sometimes you got to be patient.
Right. And have that. I could not agree any more, Lowe's, than the idea that to have the passion. If you have the passion for this particular field that you choose, or this challenge that you want to take over, if you have the passion for it, you'll fight through difficult times. You'll get knocked down and keep going. If it's something that you don't have that passion for, it's very easy to give up and, just go off and do something else. But that passion is what gives you the strength to keep fighting.
Yeah. And remember, this is the Blueprint Podcast, and here with Mike Breen. If you have any questions, questions, comments, you can put them up on the screen. I think we can see them at the bottom of it. We can see it, and because it's interactive as well, and so please do so. So did you? I was reading you about the Olympics. Did you get a chance to do something with the Olympics?
Yeah, I did 4 Olympics, 3 summer games, and 1 winter Olympics. And
how was that?
It was incredible to be able to go the 3 Olympics. I did the 2000 in Sydney, Australia, the 2004 in Athens, Greece, and then the 2008 in Beijing. And then the Winter Games were in Salt Lake City. That was back in 2002. And they were all so different. It was fascinating to see and see the different cultures. I learned so much from that. And there are a lot of different stories that come out. And the one story I've told a lot about the Olympics was in 2008 in Beijing. And the NBA had really gone global and had become, no matter where you went in the world, they were crazy about the NBA. And I was in a car, a taxi actually, going to the arena because the USA team had practice. And I was wearing a pullover that had NBA on it. And the taxi driver didn't speak really any English, but he looked around and he saw NBA. He was probably about, I'm going to say, estimate early 30s. And he points to the NBA, he goes, NBA, NBA. And I said, yes, that's the NBA. He said, do you know Kobe Bryant? And I said to him, yes, I know Kobe Bryant. He says, you speak to Kobe Bryant. And I had actually done an interview with Kobe fairly recently. I said, yes, I know Kobe Bryant. He pulled over his taxi to the side of the road and he started not crying, sobbing, because he met somebody who knew Kobe Bryant. Not that he met Kobe Bryant, that he met somebody who knew him. And it meant so much to him to meet somebody who knew Kobe Bryant. And I remember saying that day, I knew that the NBA was global and the impact it had around the world, but this is beyond what I ever could possibly imagine. And, so the Olympics gave you a real glimpse of that in terms of how things in our country can have such an impact over there. And then, just to watch the way the players represented their country. And some of it, I'm not going to say a lot of them, but some of them didn't understand what a big deal it was until now you go and you play in another country and you have USA across your chest. And it became so meaningful to them, and it humbled them as well in terms of realizing the impact that they had. So the Olympics were a great experience. I was fortunate too that I was able to bring my wife and my kids. They came to China with me. They came to Australia with me. So to be able to experience it with them was really fun.
Wow. So you mentioned your wife, wife and kids. I mean, I'm digressing for a minute. You mentioned them, man. So you said that with such pride. So,
There you go. Boy, you guys have a picture for every topic. My beautiful wife, Roseanne, we've been married 32 years. And we met on a blind date. And she's the best person in my life. Everything that's happened to me, the reason it's all been good is because of her, and the reason it all means so much because I get to share it with her. And the interesting thing is she is a crazy basketball fan.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know if it would have worked if she didn't like sports, but she loves sports, and she was a crazy basketball fan. She was a graduate of Villanova, class of 85. So you got to figure, I've been hearing about that Villanova national championship for a long time. And she likes to talk about it and remind me that Villanova won a championship and Fordham did not. So, but just another area, Lowe's, I've been so blessed. And, especially in my job, I do a lot of traveling. And that's the one negative about the job. I love the job. I still do, like the first day I started. But the job requires a lot of travel and a lot of nights away. And it was hard when the kids were little. It was hard when they got older. Because you miss things, you miss games, you miss birthdays. But I always knew that everything was okay at home. The one thing I never had to worry about, the kids were okay because she was there to take care of them every single day. And the sacrifices she made for me and for the family, it's truly extraordinary. So, I've said this before, I'm the luckiest husband in the world. Because I got to marry the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. So did any of your kids end up playing sports or wanted to be an announcer?
You know, they played sports when they were younger. My oldest son thought about going into announcing, but he shifted gears. He works for Marvel Comics and loves that. My daughter does work for the NBA. She works in the social responsibility department. And my youngest boy is just finishing up college, but he might go into the business, not as an announcer, but into the production end. And I coached them all. And you know, Lowe's, that was one of the greatest joys of my life, is coaching youth sports, and not just because I was coaching my children, but coaching other kids and realizing the impact that you could have. Because that's, you know, we see these great NFL coaches and NBA coaches and baseball managers, you know, how great they are on the money. Coaches that have the biggest impact are the ones when the kids were so, you know, just getting into it, and the impact that a great youth coach could have. And I had plenty of them. And although the one story I like to tell, so I'm coaching my daughter's team, and they're third graders, and it's their first real team that they're playing on. So I have this speech prepared on how I'm going to teach them how to play the game of basketball. I'm going to teach them how to be good sports, how to be great teammates, how to win with class, how to lose with class. And I go this whole fire and brimstone speech, and I'm all psyched up. And I asked the girls, there's 15 of them. And I said, after I finished the speech, I said, girls, do you have any questions? And all 15 hands go up. And I'm thinking, wow, I really got to them. And I asked them, I said, what's your question? And she says, what color are our uniforms? Go down. That's the only thing they wanted to know. But the beauty of it was, by the end of the season, they were all so into being good teammates and playing team ball. And some of them, you know, were nice players, and some of them will never play again. But to see them come together and learn that kind of stuff, it just shows the impact of what a youth coach can have on young men and women.
Oh yeah, everybody always asks me, and I've had I played for Phil Jackson, and actually when I got drafted to the Nets, Phil was my assistant coach, and I played for George Karl and Bill Musselman, and you know, some very good college coaches. But the one coach, when everybody asked me, I said, when I first started to play basketball, Mr. Jones was the best coach I ever had. He laid a foundation in me and many others that, you know, took us and springboarded us to our next level.
Well, how old were you when he coached you?
I was 11. And he was a big Boston Celtics fan, unfortunately. And he taught us, he knew all Red Auerbach's plays and defenses and philosophy. He created the playbook for us, you know, and Bill Russell had the you know, the famous sayings, the will to win. You know, the will to win is not nearly as important as preparing to win. He always talks about preparation, right? And he laid a foundation that made it easy for anybody that coached us after that. And you know, when I look at where I ended up, and I know where I started from, and that was, he laid the foundation for that, you know, and that's awesome. So youth coaching is so important.
Yeah, no, I almost like, I want to go back and do it again, either when hopefully someday I have grandkids, or even to coach younger kids, because it's just so important in a way to not just to teach them about the game, but encourage them about the game, and even the players that aren't very good. It's just because it provides, just because you might not play in high school or college doesn't mean you shouldn't play when you're a youngster, because it, as we said earlier, it provides so many lessons, and it's such a wonderful social experience to share with your fellow students that, you know, I just think it's the most important time for a young boy or girl to learn about the game, and that's why youth coaches are just so important.
Yeah. And I think we got a question for you, but I want to show you. You mentioned Marvel, right? So I got this right next to me.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. You mentioned Marvel. You mentioned animation, and this is right up my alley. But you know, and Steve Jacobs. I don't know if you know Steve Jacobs. Daryl Jacobs. I got a Steve Jacobs friend too as well. Daryl Jacobs. I had him on the podcast. He says there are very few people of color doing play-by-play commentators. What advice would you give a person of color who may only see beginning and being an analyst as the only option?
Daryl is clearly right on that. But the optimism I have is that it's changing in a big way, and the opportunities are there. And I think the people that are in charge of hiring now are aware of how there wasn't any kind of balance and there wasn't equal opportunity for so many years. But just for example, in ESPN now, we have 5 NBA announcers, and Mark Jones is one of the premier basketball play-by-play guys in the business right now. He does a lot more than NBA, but he's somebody that now is showing young kids that they can do it as well, regardless of the color of their skin. Brian Custer has also just been added to the NBA roster this year. So the opportunities are coming. They're still way behind, and there's still a lot of work has to be done. But for these men to show that the opportunities are there for young broadcasters of color who want to do play-by-play and not be an analyst. One of my favorite broadcasters I worked with for years is Gus Johnson. Same thing. What Gus has done for the business in terms of showing, how talented he is, and with his own unique style, which I think is so important. I think, they're pioneers in many ways. So although Daryl's correct, I'm really optimistic that it's starting to change, and the opportunities are going to be there for everybody.
Yeah. And one of my good friends from Mount Vernon, Bill Daughtry.
I'm an old friend of Bill's. Yep.
Yeah. Bill was amazing, and we used to bring him back to Mount Vernon all the time and introduce us to some of the young people, at the club who were interested in getting into the business. And you got to have them. And then also who's doing a pretty nice job now is Ken Singleton with the Yes Network from Mount Vernon. Play baseball, and he's in the business now. And so, yeah, like you say, you are seeing every day on the ESPN, you're seeing a number of individuals of color who are doing tremendous jobs.
And now getting the play-by-play opportunities too. It's, as Daryl said, mainly it was if you weren't an analyst, you weren't going to get the job. But now that is starting to change.
Yeah, and I want to. I'm going to have a pop-up guest. Occasionally we have a pop-up guest, and then I want to talk about after some of the guys that you work with. I think my wife showed a couple of pictures there, but this young man, Isaiah Rose, I met at the Boys and Girls Club. And he came in the Boys and Girls Club. I don't know. Isaiah he was a young guy, man. He had to be like, what, 14?
16.
16?
16. Yep.
Yeah. When I first met you, were you 16?
16.
Okay. Now, and somebody said, well, asking him anything about sports. And I would ask him who won this in this year, and he would just answer it. And man, it wasn't a question you could ask him about basketball he didn't know. And I introduced him to Ben Gordon, back in the day. I said, Ben, ask him a question, about basketball. He would just pop it off, man. Ben was so excited with them. And now, he's doing a number of things. So Isaiah, tell us real quickly some of the things since we've had that conversation, some of the things that you're doing and your question that you might have for Mike.
Well, Coach Moore, thank you for having me on. Mr. Breen, Mike Breen, a legendary broadcaster in your own right, a legend. Thank you. First and foremost, I just want to say that this conversation that the both of you are having is very insightful and reaffirming in my own process as a broadcaster myself. I'm a play-by-play announcer for Mount Vernon High School. I do play-by-play for the University of Bridgeport Purple Knights. I also work as a statistician for high school basketball as well. And I think that everything that you guys have spoken about throughout this entire conversation is very insightful, not only as for broadcasters, but for anybody that is chasing their dreams. So I just want to say thank you guys for putting that out there for everybody to hear. In terms of my question for you, Mike, as a person who's been passionate about sports and has followed basketball for so long, you growing up in New York, I'm sure you heard of Marty Glickman and listening to Marv Albert. So how have you distinguished your voice, obviously listening to them, but distinguishing your own voice and building your own brand to be who you are today?
You know, Isaiah, it's a great question because, you know, when you first go in, you want to try and find your voice, so to speak. And obviously, I was very influenced by Marv Albert. I was very well aware of Marty Glickman. Marty Glickman was the first really true play-by-play guy. He invented a lot of the vernacular of what play-by-play is. And then I listened to a lot of other announcers as well. Like I was a Met fan, so I loved Lindsey Nelson. I was a New York Giant football fan, so I loved their announcer, Jim Gordon. So I listened to as many as I possibly could, and I liked, you know, whatever I liked on certain announcers, I'd try and incorporate that a little bit into what I wanted to do. But I think the key is it has to be your own personality, and you have to use your own personality, and then you can, you know, use some of the things that these other broadcasters use. And it all starts, Isaiah, with repetition. Now, the fact that you're calling games now and you're on the air doing games, there is nothing better I could tell you to do than that, because you'll get repetitions and you'll do the games and you'll go back and listen to your tapes, and there'll be certain things you like that you do and certain things that you think, maybe I can get a little better on that. And like anything, you know, practice makes perfect. And if you keep working at it and keep doing it, and you start with you know, I always, not to backtrack here, but I always feel learning how to do play-by-play is like building a house. You've got to build a really strong foundation to start. Okay, so you have to get all the technical and the aspects of play-by-play in terms of what you have to do. And then as you get that down pat and you're comfortable with that, then you start adding other things. You add the extra bedroom, you add the basketball court. And those are kind of where you add more of your personality and let your personality shine. So it's a slow process of building, and you'll get more comfortable as you go along, adding to that initial foundation. And the one thing that I was told of years ago that really helped me, Isaiah, was to find people who are going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And by that is people who are going to give you real critical feedback. Because if, you know, when I was growing up, my mother would listen to me and she'd say, "Oh, son, you did a great job." And that's wonderful. That's not how you get better. You need people to help you. And I had 3 friends when I first got into the business that I was close enough with that I told them, I need you to tell me what I'm not good at, what I have to get better at. And having them give me that feedback really made me better. Now, there were some days when they were critical of what I did. I was not happy with it. You don't like to hear that. Yeah. But it makes you better. And in the long run, you realize how important that part is. So I think those are just some of the aspects. And the other thing I tell everybody who goes into broadcasting, and quite frankly, even if you're in any field, it helps, is really work on your vocabulary. It's something that I didn't start doing until I was later. Still trying to work on it. Having a good vocabulary is so important, because when you're describing action, you know, you're going to describe a lot of the same plays. You don't want to use the same words all the time. So you have to have other words to describe what you see, and not every play is great. If you keep saying, "Oh, that was a great play, great pass, so that was a great shot," that's just an example of how you need to have a good vocabulary to add a little thing. And the final thing I say to you is, I think, and Lowe's I'm sure will back me up on this, when you're home watching a game and you're listening to the announcers, if that announcer sounds like he's having a great time, if he's really enjoying being there, that to me is the best announcer. You need to have the energy and enthusiasm, and you want to make that viewer or the listener who's home think, man, that guy, there's no place he'd rather be than calling that game. And I think that's a really important part.
Great insight. Great insight. Another question I have is, one of the things that you spoke about is just having to fight through and persevere, and sports taught you that. And I harken on that growing up myself, utilizing sports as a vessel to learn lessons that maybe I couldn't quite experience myself just yet. But one thing that when you push through that works in your favor is timing. And for you, you got in on the ground floor of the WNBA, broadcasting for NBC, and you saw the explosion, especially 97, 98, 99. So for you, in those times where you might see an explosion, you spoke about the Olympics and you saw the game going global. In those moments, are you aware that this might be happening, or are you just focused in the moment?
You know, it's another great question, Isaiah. It's more focus in the moment. Because when you're that age, how old are you now?
I'm 30. Excuse me, 31. Sometimes the age is always, I'm 31.
Believe me, I get it. I'm trying to get mine lower too, right? But you know, you're just worrying about taking the next step, or in some ways just doing the next broadcast the right way, and to not think too much big picture. Then it gets a little crazy, and you start to stress out a little bit. So I think that's more of part of it. And you know what? If you just, and this is the thing I left out before, if you just go into every single broadcast you do or every event that you do, and you are fully prepared, then you have the confidence going on the air that no matter what happens, you're prepared. No matter what happens in that game, you'll be prepared. And that's the greatest feeling. Every once in a while, if I feel like I'm not prepared to the amount I normally do, man, I just don't feel right on the air. So just concentrate on being prepared, being the best broadcaster you can, getting feedback, working on your craft, and don't try and think too far ahead. Try and think of just getting better every single time you go on the air.
Thank you so much. For me, sometimes my ambition gets in the way, and I just want to be at the highest level all the time. But listening to this conversation and understanding the process and what it takes to truly be your best, that will put you in positions to be the best. So I'm very, very appreciative of this conversation. Coach Moore, thank you for giving me the access to this, not only this platform, but just this opportunity to hear the jewels that were being dropped. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, so Isaiah, thank you very much, man. I thought about you. I said, man, this would be nice for you to come on and ask Mike a few questions, since that's your dream. So thank you for taking time out. And Mike, thank you for answering the questions.
Oh, please. Great to meet you, Isaiah.
Thank you.
I think we're looking at Isaiah is not only an announcer, analyst, but he also is is an inspiring. Yeah, I mean.
Well, just before I get off, one thing that I've noticed, especially with you being play-by-play announcer, not only for the Knicks but for the NBA and covering different sports, how for you does your perspective change? You might be more curated to a Knicks broadcast when covering for MSG, but then you have to go nationally to cover a Brooklyn Nets game or a Warriors game. So how does your perspective change from covering on different sides?
No, you're exactly right. It changes because your audience is different. When you do a national game for ESPN, say it's the Lakers and the Celtics, you can't go heavy on the Lakers because you've got Celtic fans watching. So you pretty much have to balance the telecast with 50-50 for both. Meanwhile, if I'm doing it for the Knicks game, the majority of the audience are crazy Knicks fans. So say the Knicks are playing the Dallas Mavericks and they're down by 20. I wouldn't necessarily first talk about why the Mavericks are up 20. I'm talking about why the Knicks are in such a hole early in the game. Whereas if it was a Lakers-Celtic game, I'd talk more about the positive of why a certain team is ahead. And you just spend a little more time on it. If I had to put a number on it, I'd probably do 75% of my comments during a Knick game on MSG are Knicks centered. But if I'm doing a Knick game on ESPN and I have their opener next week, they play the Celtics on ESPN, I can't do that same type of telecast. The Celtic fans would want to kill me. So I do it 50-50. And it's just a balance in terms of, how often you talk about what the Knicks are doing, how often you're talking about what the Celtics are doing like that.
Well, when you first got started, was that very difficult for you? Did you have to turn it off and turn it on, or was it?
That's a great insight because I'm a Knicks fan since I was 6 years old, and there were some games where, Reggie Miller would hit this just dagger 3-pointer against the Knicks in the playoffs, and it would be crushing for me. But on the air, I had to be screaming, "Oh, Reggie Miller hits the 3, what a shot from Miller!" And inside, it's just killing me. And at first, maybe people could have noticed it, but you realize you're so focused on the job that you have to do that you just have to stay professional in those. And maybe sometimes I'm sure I slipped a little bit, but again, like I said earlier, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you're able to be objective, even when it's something could be crushing for a Knicks fan.
Well, one of my challenges, I think one of the best things that you said to me so far, not all of it has been amazing, but you talked about critical analysis that would make you better. And one of my coworkers, a play-by-play announcer, when I'm dual color and when I'm coloring, he's play-by-play, JJ Duke. He told me that when the game is really good, my broadcasts are the best, are my best. But sometimes when the games get a little dry or it gets in a lag, that my emotions are low and it affects my broadcast. So what I want to ask you is, sometimes you might get in a game where it turns into a blowout, a 40-point blowout, but you got to go through the whole 2.5 hours. So how do you sustain a certain level of emotion to have a balanced broadcast?
Well, Isaiah, what you bring up is something every single broadcaster struggles with. There's one of the hardest things to do is keep your energy at a high level when the game is just either poorly played or, as you say, is a blowout. And when I talked about having people critique me, one of the best criticisms I got is a gentleman by the name of Kenny Wolf. He was a longtime producer of the NFL and Major League Baseball and NBA. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, Kenny, do me a favor. I've got a game coming up this Thursday. Can you listen to it for me and give me some feedback?" So that happened to be a really busy week. I had done a game Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 3 in a row. The Tuesday game was a double overtime game. The Wednesday game was decided at the buzzer. And there were 2 great games. The Thursday game, the one that he was going to listen for me, was like a 30-point blowout. So the next day I called him up and said, "Ken, did you get a chance to listen?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I heard it." He goes, "And if that's the first time that I had ever heard you, I would have not been a fan of your announcing." He goes, "You had zero energy." He goes, "You got to make sure that you realize that how fortunate you are to be calling a game, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the way it played." He goes, "I know you're a good announcer." He says, I listen to you when you do those close games. There's nothing better. But this game," he goes, "if that's the only time I listened to you, I would not have been impressed." He goes, "You need to keep that same energy up. You need to force it up there and find a way to make it interesting." And that really clicked and resonated with me. And one of the things I try and do, if the game's a blowout and the outcome is well decided, there are other things that you can concentrate on to make it an interesting telecast, like tell personal stories about the players that are doing well. There's a lot of different things that you can get into. You can get into a debate about a certain rule change or other things like that. So I always try and have a few topics on my notes that I could go to in case the game's a blowout and it's not interesting.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm still in my infancy and still growing as a broadcaster. I've been broadcasting now for 7 years and just really growing into my own signatures. And one of the things that to your point about personality and just having your own essence in your broadcasts are very important. But that point right there, just remembering the opportunity and how thankful you are for that opportunity. Keeping that first and foremost will definitely keep my energies high. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome, Isaiah.
I don't want to hold you for too long. I got to get going. But again, thank you, not only to you, Mike, but Coach Moore. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. And you asked some amazing questions.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward. Man, let's stay in touch. I'll talk to you later.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, Isaiah. And, I don't know, Mike, if you knew, did you know Bob Wolf?
Oh, yeah. It's funny you mentioned him, Lowe's, because you started the whole interview talking about curiosity. I thought that was the number one strength of Bob Wolf as a sportscaster. He was so curious. He was so curious about the personalities that played, what made them tick. And that's one of the lessons I learned from Bob. Bob was one of my fortunate enough to know him very well for a long time, and his son Rick. But Bob is, he's a legend, and that was the thing that always struck me. He had this curiosity about him on the air that I found so intriguing.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I think for a lot of us, we remember him in the Con Edison Award winners, right? He used to always interview all the Con Edison Award winners,
right. And
that was my first time meeting Bob. And eventually, you got your little picture, right? They draw your little picture of your Con Edison Award winner, and it like you said, yeah, he was always intrigued about you.
Yes.
Right. And he was always curious about, how did you become who you are and why are you this way? And he used to ask them very engaging questions. And he just kind of brought it out of you because that's hard to do when you're talking about young people.
Correct.
Like just in high school, because you don't like to talk, just like,
of course not. No, he had a way about him. He had this warmth about him that he made you feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so talk to me a little bit about some of the guys that you're announcing with. We've seen some pictures earlier. I mean, Van Gundy and Mark Jackson and, Jeff and, the guys are little characters, they got a little thing going on. But so, player to a coach. Back then. So talk about some of the guys that you get the opportunity to share the television with each and every night.
Well, Lowe's, the reason I fell in love with basketball as a kid was I loved the team aspect of it. And what I have found out very quickly when I started doing the broadcasting is broadcasting basketball is the ultimate team function as well. And, you can't be good at your job unless you have great teammates in broadcasting. And I've had some of the best, not only all the people in the truck, the producers, the directors, the camera people that are just phenomenal, but to work with people like Jeff, Mark. What I say about those two is that they have such respect for each other and they like each other. And that's why they have this great chemistry on the air. And they kind of push each other and they have debates, and sometimes they disagree completely about something, but because of that respect factor, it never gets anybody's feathers. And when I do a game with them, every single game, and I've done hundreds of games with them, Lowe's, each game they make me laugh and I learn something about the league and they make me laugh. And I think that's the key. And basketball's serious and you got to take it seriously. But you also have to have some fun on the air. It really taught me it's okay to have some fun. And, we when I first started doing NBA basketball, Jeff was an assistant coach and Mark was a young player. And we've kind of all grown up together. I've watched their kids. They've watched my kids. And having that continuity and that comfort level with them makes all the difference in the world. Sometimes as a play-by-play announcer, you're working with a new analyst every week. With me, I've been blessed to be working with them for 15 years, and I've known them for 25. So that comfort level really makes a difference on the air. And the beauty about Mark and Jeff, I can ask them any question, and I don't have to preview it with them during a commercial or before the game. I throw any question out, and I know they're going to have something interesting to say about it. And for a play-by-play guy to have that comfort, knowing that your analyst can answer anything, is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's nice. And plus, here you looking at it from your perspective. You're not as a player, right? But as a play-by-play, and then you got a coach, right? And then you got an actual player, a guy who used to play. So they're seeing it from two different perspectives as well. He's seeing it as a coach. He's seeing it as a player.
And they're not fighting for airtime.
No.
Beauty. When I do games with them, I probably talk more. I probably talk less than other games that I announce, because you have these two really smart individuals, fun individuals who've got a lot to say. And, so you let them go. Like when I do a game with Clyde, it's just me and Clyde. So there's obviously two in the booth, and I talk probably a little bit more, but it's a completely different dynamic. And I've had some of the most amazing partners. Doug Collins is one of the smartest basketball people I've ever met. And then Jb Brown, who's become like a father.
Yeah.
Knows as much basketball as anybody who's lived. So it's just, it's an incredible honor to work with these people and learn so much about the game that I love. And I've been doing games for 30 years, like I said, in the NBA, and I'm still learning all the time. It's the part about it that I love so much, is that you never stop learning about it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Watching you guys, and you mentioned earlier, you said Isaiah Rhodes. You said you talked about develop your vocabulary, right? Now Walt has a vocabulary.
Well, the story behind that. So for years, and I don't know if he still does, he probably does, he carried a thesaurus with him. And when Walt first started doing games, Lowe's, a lot of kids in the inner city didn't have cable. So they used to listen to the games on the radio. So he would go to schools and talk to the schools, and the kids would raise hands and they would ask him, "You used this word on the air, what did that mean?" And he would definition. And it struck him. He goes, "You know what?" He goes, "These kids are learning vocabulary words from me." So he started really going into the thesaurus and coming up a lot of different words. And his original goal, and such a noble notion, was to help teach the kids who were listening at home, help teach them new vocabulary words with every game.
Well, yeah, I mean, one time I was like, "Look, what was that word? And let me look this up. Is that a real word or what?"
I don't know the meaning of. He's a New York treasure. He's an absolute New York treasure.
Wow. Yeah. Have you ever been to his restaurant?
Yes, frequently. And the unfortunate thing, and he's pretty upset about it, the pandemic took such a toll on it that he just had to close it down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Clyde's Wine and Dine.
Yeah. What were we at? I think we were in DC. Somebody mentioned he has a couple of restaurants someplace else too, as well, I think.
I'm not sure if he still has those, but the one in New York City is just closed, and that was he was upset about that. But it's the way a lot of people have been having to deal with the pandemic.
Well, maybe he'll end up opening it back up, and
I hope so.
Yeah, because I went down there. I was there one evening, and shooting. They got a little basketball hoop in the back.
Oh yeah, and he always loves going there. He wears his rings, and he goes from table to table, and he shows them the championship rings.
Wow. Yeah. So I want to pop on as we come to a close here. The guy who sowed the seed to all this, he's on mute right now, but that's Isaiah. That's my son Isaiah.
Hello, Isaiah.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's going great. I had a great time with this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I always tell him every time I would come home from a Knicks game, I would tell him I saw you, and then I was like, oh, and then he started talking about the podcast, and I was just like, you got to get Mike on, got to, So it's definitely just because we constantly watch Knicks games. Sometimes we turn it off. Back a couple years ago, you turn it off. Fourth quarter, they be back in the game, and he's popping back on. You're like, all right, you're enjoying the Knicks game. But now we can something to look forward to, to see how the Knicks are going to do this season, especially with the addition of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Knicks are going to do.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it unfolds. If Kemba Walker, and it's such a great story, the New York City kid, Rice High School, if he stays healthy, I think it's got a chance to be a great year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what do you think about some of the young guys? And I think this is the rookies from last year. Was it Toppin
and Quickly?
Yeah,
and Quickly. I mean, what do you think their growth is in regards to this year? They did well their first year.
One of my favorite things is watching guys come in their second year. They just the confidence level is so different because now they know what to expect. Now, Quickly had a bigger impact than anybody thought, and he's just such a smart player for a young player. And I think we're going to see him be a little bit more aggressive because he got stronger. Toppin, I felt bad for him because there was no summer league last year because of the pandemic. There was a very little training camp. And then opening night, he hurt his calf. He was out for 10 games. So he was behind the 8 ball. Plus the guy that he played behind, Julius Randle, who had this amazing year, led the NBA minutes per game. So Toppin didn't get a lot of playing time.
That's true.
Summer league, and he's really looked good in the preseason. I think we're going to see a really big jump from him.
Yeah. I'm going to let Isaiah ask you a question, but I got this real quick question for you. I think Toppin can play the 3 position. I think him and Randall could play together. I mean, I think that he's just skilled like that.
Yeah, he's improved his perimeter game so much. Tom Thibodeau's a little worried about playing them together because Obi's still learning defensive end, but he's shown some really nice just defensive savvy so far here in the season. So he have to find him to get more minutes. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Isaiah?
How does this over the last 2 years, right? How does this Knicks team compare to all the ones you've seen over the last couple of decades?
Well, it's no knock on the coaches who came before because there were some good coaches. Sometimes for some reason it doesn't work. But what Tom Thibodeau has done, he's brought back that defensive commitment that if you don't have that defensive commitment, you simply don't play. And that was the number one reason why they improved last year is they were one of the premier defensive teams in the league, and they took real pride in it. It's like the whole championship that your dad and I have been talking about throughout this thing. It's so important now to get that defensive commitment, and they just play for each other. So that's number one. And then even the greatest coaches, they won't succeed unless they have the players. These players really committed to each other. And Julius Randle, who had such a rough first year in New York, instead of getting down, instead of saying, oh, this is not going to work, he just worked twice as hard. And his jump from his first year as a Knick to last year was one of the biggest transformations I've ever seen in years doing the NBA.
Wow, yeah. He's become like a real leader for the Knicks.
Yes. Yeah, he got better in every aspect of the game, including leadership.
Wow. Yeah. So, Mike, we're down to our last minute here, and I want to say, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming on. And I really enjoyed this. I was looking forward to it. And once we started promoting it, a number of people were saying, oh, man, he's the man. Man, nobody's as good as he is. And they're absolutely right. And I've really enjoyed you. Listening to the Knicks game and stuff like that. It's just been great, man. Thanks again. And tell the family I said hello.
Well, hey, Lowe's, as I said at the beginning, when I was young, I was in awe of you but what you've done in your post-playing career, and the people that you've helped, especially the youth, I'm even in more awe of what you're doing now. So thanks for everything you've done. And Isaiah, I say to you, just be patient with the old man as he gets older, okay?
I'm going to try.
So we got 2 Isaiahs. And again, Mike, thanks. Appreciate you. And both Isaiahs, thank you very much for coming on. And to all those who support each and every week, I want to say thank you very much. Man, I truly appreciate you all. And God bless you and have a wonderful week.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Lowe's More, the Blueprint Podcast. Stay connected and follow us at our website, www.lowesmore.com. That's LOWESMOORE.com. You can also join the discussion on Twitter at Lowe's More and on Facebook at Lowe's More Jr. As always, thank you for pushing your mindset towards a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast to stay fully up to date with everything we're up to. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.
What they teaching is a joke. I ain't buying it like I'm broke. Insufficient funds for insignificant.